one of four around acing the consulting interview. Julie, before you go dark on me, a quick question. Can you clarify, does everybody have to sign up for each of the four parts, or are they all set once they do the big Zoom sign in?
Yep, once you do the big one that you kind of were able to choose all of
The
them,
ones you
but
wanted
that
to do.
it's the same link.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we are not worried about anything in Handshake. We're all good to go, right?
Yep, if you're signed up in here now, you'll get reminders for the ones you selected about a day before, I think, or an hour before. So yeah,
Perfect.
but it'll always be in Handshake as well as the club's calendar if you're looking for the link again.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Okay. Thanks, Jules. All right. So, friends, I'm going to turn this over to Peter in about 15 seconds. This is brought to you from the CBCC. Peter came highly recommended from another school. And so we wanted to take an opportunity to do this training, even though I know it sort of came up really rather quickly. So by and large, we know you're in this room if you are a second year that's got interviews coming up, an MSBA student that has interviews coming up, maybe a second year that is going to be doing none of the consulting interviews, but wants to just shore up their skill set and leverage it in their day to day or their future job that they'll be a part of. So so if you're any of those, you are in the right room. We are talking directly to you. And if you have any questions, if anything comes up, let me know. I'll be here on the background. I'll keep an eye on chat. But with no further ado, Peter, thank you so much for being part of this. We're excited to go through this with you, and you can just take it away.
Absolutely. No, thanks so much for having me today and welcome everybody. A couple of announcements before we kick things off. This webinar is for you, so feel free to ask any questions at any moment. You can do that over chat, over voice, whatever works for you the best. We're going to cover a lot of territory today, so I would encourage you to take notes as you might forget something in a week or two. We're going to do a lot of exercises today as well, so I would encourage you to participate, as active learning is one of the best ways to internalize new information. While we are giving it a minute or two for other people to jump on this call, please click the link in the chat. It will take you to a very short survey that will give me an idea of where you are in terms of your case preparation journey, how you feel today, and that will help me understand how deep we should go into today's conversation. With that said, let's give it a minute. Feel free to click the link in the chat, submit your responses, and we will start very quickly. If you've just joined the call, please click the link in the chat. It will take you to a very short multiple choice question survey, and we're going to start in 20 seconds. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your responses. It seems like level of energy is fairly high, which is great. A couple of folks don't feel it today, which is understandable. It's Monday, potentially one of the most challenging days. So hopefully this webinar will bring a little bit of excitement and clarity to how to go through a consulting case. It seems like pretty much it's a priority for everyone, and we have a very diverse audience today. We have people at the early stages of their preparation, and this webinar is perfect for you. And we have people who are fairly mature. This webinar will give you some refresher and some reference points on some best practices that will enable you to maybe update or polish your established habits. And finally, in terms of the 3-minute break, it seems like we're going to do it at the top of the hour, given that most people would agree with it. Today, we're going to be laser focused on the case portion of the interview. We're not covering the other part of the interview, as you can see on the screen. As you might know, you need to nail down 5 skills to secure your job offer. Structuring, or your ability to break down a complicated business problem into digestible work streams with a list of analysis. Brainstorming, or your ability to ideate to suggest actionable recommendations. Math, pretty much every case nowadays has a math portion to it, and you need to be able to solve. Usually there are 4 major problems: profitability, break-even analysis, payback period, and ROI. If you know them really well, you will be able to do around 90% of all math problems. And as a reminder, I'm going to drop a 1-pager in the chat with formulas just to help you refresh them. Storytelling. Storytelling is probably the most important skill. It is your ability to generate insights, to demonstrate your business acumen, to connect the dots. So arguably, this is the one that enables you to get an offer. Sometimes you might hear that structuring is the skill that helps you establish the first strong impression, and that's the most important one. It does help you establish the first impression, but there is a huge difference between mechanical presentation and presentation with good stories, with second layer insights, and I'm going to demonstrate it later during this conversation. Finally, chart training. Typically, a case has a chart, an exhibit, and you will need to read it and synthesize and demonstrate that you can see second and third layer insights. I work with around 500 candidates every cycle, and usually candidates are not that great at chart trading. So if you don't feel comfortable with charts, it's totally common. Don't be too worried about that. Make sure you nail down these 4 skills first, and then leave chart trading for later. We're going to go through this chart really quickly, given that pretty much everybody has done cases already. Your case starts with the business problem. As a candidate, you need to restate the prompt and ask 2-3 clarifying questions. Then you have a moment to think about your approach and prepare your framework. Then you present it within 2-3 minutes. And after that, depending on the type of the case, whether it's candidate-driven or interviewer-led, you will need to either drive the conversation or answer questions. Agnostic to those 2 types, you will still have brainstorming questions, charts, and math in some sequence. At the end of your case, you would usually have a recommendation, except for McKinsey. McKinsey cases do not have recommendation portion. They just abruptly end it at some point and ask you for your questions about the firm. Today, we're going to take a case in the familiar territory, fast food, and we're going to take it very slowly, pause after every section to debrief and do an exercise so that you have all the opportunities to ask questions. I'm going to do a little bit of role play here. I'm going to be an interviewer and a candidate to demonstrate some of the best practices. With that said, I'm going to time myself. Peter, thank you so much for coming today. Not sure if you're a big fan of fast food, but today your client is a fast food restaurant chain, Scotty's. They have over 2,000 stores in the United States. They are mostly concentrated in the South. Restaurants are structured as old-fashioned drive-ins. Each store has 20 to 30 drive-in spots where patrons can order and receive their food while seated in their cars. The stores have no seating areas. Last year, Scotty's profitability declined, and their CEO has reached out to your team to help them turn things around and improve their profitability. So how would you help the client? No, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm actually a big fan of fast food, so I can't wait to help our client and see what is going on with their profitability and how we can turn things around. Before I prepare my plan of attack here, I would like to play it back to you to make sure we are on the same page. It seems like our client is a fast food regional restaurant chain with 2,000 stores, which is exciting as they enjoy economies of scale and might benefit from volume discounts and have really competitive cost structure. But I would like to validate that with you later. It seems like they have very interesting business model. They don't have sit-down areas, and they have drive-in approach when they have 20, 30 spots, and their patrons can order and receive their food while seated in their cars. Did I capture everything correctly? No, absolutely. Fantastic. Now, before I proceed, just a couple of follow-up questions. First, does our client have any financial goal in this case? No, absolutely. They would like to increase their profitability by 2 percentage points. Interesting. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. It's single-digit number, and we are in a commoditized industry where I would imagine price pressure is really high. So that does sound achievable. Do we have any information about the competition? Totally. There are several major players like McDonald's, Wendy's, KFC, Burger King, and a couple of others. Interesting. It seems like we are in a fairly consolidated space with a few dominating players, which is alarming as they represent really high competitive pressure and maybe one of the reasons of our declining profitability, as they might be still in our market share. But I would like to get some hard data to validate that with you later. Now, if you don't mind, I would like to take a couple of minutes to prepare my approach. Sure, please take your time. All right. So the case started with a business problem. The interviewer shared the prompt. Then the candidate restated the prompt and they started adding stories or insights. And I would highly encourage you to do that as well, although that's not necessary, but that helps you immediately start building that first impression and demonstrate that you see interesting hypothesis, that you can understand how this business works, and that in general differentiates you from other candidates. So when I was restating the prompt, I suggested that we are a large player with economies of scale, so our cost structure might be competitive, but I will need to get some hard data to validate that. Then I ask a couple of clarifying questions. I would not encourage you to ask too many of them. Usually when you ask 4 and 5 and more, you might be labeled as unstructured, as de facto you started solving the case without first putting together a framework. So 2 or 3 questions are typically a good practice. Now, sometimes this part is a little bit overhyped, and candidates believe that they need to ask that very important question that will be game-changing and will put theirs on the path to the solution. Cases are not designed that way, and at the beginning of the case, you don't know much about it, so it's really high of an expectation to put in yourself to ask that absolutely crucial question. So 2-3 questions. In fact, 20% of McKinsey interviewers will tell you, hey, don't ask us any questions. We'll give you all the information we had. Just go ahead and prepare your framework. Once you receive the answers, it's also a good idea to contextualize that a little bit and add a little bit of stories. When I learned that we need to improve it by 2%, I immediately contextualize that by suggesting that this is a commoditized industry. Price pressure is typically high, as our customers might have a lot of very similar options to go to, and thus our margins are slim, and increasing it by 2% sounds reasonable. The second data point was around competitive landscape, several major players, and I immediately suggested that that's alarming. It's alarming because they enjoy high brand awareness, develop distribution, deep marketing pockets, and in general represent high competitive pressure. So those 15-second stories help you educate yourself on the problem and start building this impression that you really see it through, you understand how where the root causes might be, and already have interesting hypotheses. And after that, I asked for a moment to prepare my plan of attack and took a couple of minutes. All right, I have been talking for a while. Let's make sure that this all makes sense. Please click the link in the chat. It will take you to a very short quiz. Let's give it a minute and a half, and then we will check out your answers. Let's give it 15 more seconds. Terrific. Thank you so much for your responses. Let's dive into them. It seems like this is great. Everything is great except for the last question. Let's explore it. What is important during this part of the interview? Ask the right clarifying questions to hit the problem right away. Just to reiterate, you can ask any questions you want. It can be financial goal, competitive landscape, geographical footprint, customer groups, whatever you want to clarify. It's especially important when you are in the unfamiliar territory. For example, McKinsey had a case some time ago around offshore oil and gas rigs. And if you're not familiar with the oil and gas industry, it's a good idea to clarify the value chain, the customer segments, the operational model. Or BCG had a case around air temperature control systems. Again, if you don't feel exactly comfortable with this industry, you can ask, what is it that we produce? Is it software? Is it hardware? What our customers are, etc. So those questions should be to inform your understanding, like big picture understanding of the problem, rather than point you into the right direction. So there is no expectation that you will ask that very important question, and some interviewers would probably sometimes even tell you, do not ask any questions at all. State the working hypothesis. That used to be the best practice maybe 15, 20 years ago. You might read some books and find it there, but nowadays pretty much no one does it. It's a good habit to have. I will still encourage you to develop it, but the only company that would religiously expect you to do the working hypothesis is Bain. They have this principle answer first, and that involves that you need to kick off your framework with stating your hypothesis. Everybody else is fairly flexible, so you can have it, you can skip it. It would not change the assessment of your performance. Add colors. I believe that this would be the most important part of the framework of the opening, given that this is the chance for you to immediately differentiate you from other candidates. Most candidates, they just restate the prompt, usually word to word, then ask 2-3 questions, collect data without giving anything back, and then they start working on their framework. So there will be nothing inspiring for the interviewer in such performance. If you contextualize some of the aspects of the case, if you demonstrate that you already have interesting thoughts, that will help you to stand out. All right, I hope this makes sense. If you still have questions or are confused around anything, please feel free to ask your questions. You can do that over chat, over voice, whatever works for you the best. Now, the candidate took a moment to prepare their plan of attack. Given that we are in the profitability arena, you can start with profitability analysis. Usually you would explore revenue, and costs. You can keep it high level, just revenue and costs, or you can double click on that and understand pricing strategy, volume data, a breakdown by region, and maybe historical data. The classic way to think about cost structure is fixed costs and variable costs. Now, what you see in front of you is a bucket or a work stream. It is a list of analysis for one of your team members to work on. And this is how you can think about the framework, that you have a team of 3, 4 analysts, and you need to tell them what to do, how to analyze this problem, what areas they need to research, so that this first analyst looked into this, get data synthesized, and then come back to you with their findings, and you can problem solve together to find some next steps. But profitability analysis is not the only area you would like to explore. Usually you want to look outside of your company and look into the external factors. In this case, it is a fast food market in the South. And usually there you want to understand the competition, you want to look into the growth rate, and you want to understand typical margins. Competition, you might be in the, we know that this is a consolidated space, but we don't know much about those players, their marketing strategy, their distribution channels, their pricing, their geographical footprint, and a lot of other aspects of their business. And that will be crucial because we will need to compete against them and increase our revenue. Growth rate, we need to understand whether the market we are in is helping us or working against us. If this market is expanding, fantastic, it creates favorable conditions for us to grow. But if the market is shrinking, given that people prefer healthier food options these days, or there is growing number of vegan and vegetarian customers, that might be a problem because that might put downward pressure on our revenue, causing diseconomies of scale and thus problems with profitability. It's a good idea to run a benchmarking analysis and understand typical margins in the industry to see if the declining profitability is your client-specific issue or industry-wide problem. And thus you will know whether the root causes are external or internal. Finally, it's a good idea to understand business model of your client in terms of customer segments. Are we talking about price-sensitive audiences and low-end segments like McDonald's would serve, or is it a little bit pricier offerings like Five Guys would offer, given the higher quality patties and other ingredients? We need to understand offerings. Do we offer burgers, fried chicken, desserts, anything else? Because if we have some gaps in our value proposition, that might become part of your recommendation. Now, what you see in front of you is one of many options of how you can structure your approach for a profitability case. You don't necessarily need to focus on this one. You can choose whatever works for you the best, but whatever framework you will decide to build, make sure that you have 7 analyses there, revenue and costs, as those 2 are major pillars for a profitability case. These 3 for the market analysis, and these 2 for internal analysis. So it can look like this. You can also add some optional analysis like marketing strategy, distribution channel. But if you don't feel them, you can leave them out, and that will be totally reasonable. You can, sometimes people prefer break down the first bucket into 2, and you can have 4 bucket structure, revenue analysis and costs as 2 separate ones, as long as you have all 7 analyses baked into your structure somewhere. Now, quite often you might hear feedback from consulting firms, from your peers, that please do not memorize structures. While directionally I would agree with this feedback, sometimes candidates take it to the extreme and they believe that they don't need to do anything. They just need to show up and do their framework from scratch. That typically, like in theory, that sounds reasonable, that you would like to be creative, out-of-box thinking, but in reality, you increase pressure for yourself, you take longer, you miss things, you overlap, and that usually causes more troubles than does good. So I would encourage you to adopt 80-20 approach. So study the different types of cases. There are 7 of them, and we're going to cover them the next time. I think it's on Wednesday, where we will explore different types of cases and approaches to them. So make sure that you have your personal framework for each of those 7 types, and you thought it through, you feel good about it, and then use that as a starting point and adjust it to the specifics of the case. Like 20% of your framework will be adjusted, but the core of it will be there from the beginning. So that will give you confidence, that will save you time, trouble, and you will be able to spend the time on, for example, storytelling. A couple of formal criteria. Usually you don't want to have just 2 buckets like this. It might be perceived as if you don't see the problem from different angles. You don't have a comprehensive plan of attack. Just optically, it seems a little bit too narrow-minded. You don't want to have 5 buckets either. Some candidates a couple of years ago got feedback from Bain, hey, you're going to kill the team. Why? Because you have so much you want to analyze in this structure. And if you're at the very beginning of your journey, it's really likely that you will get to the point when you will start putting a lot in your framework, because you will learn a lot of different analysis, and you will see a lot of different cases, industries, functions, and you will know so much, and you would want to squeeze it all into your framework. So try to prioritize, try to make sure that your structure is not boiling the ocean, and that you're focusing only on the important aspects of the case. So 3 or 4 buckets is typically the best practice. In terms of the depth, you can have 2, 3, or 4 analyses, but don't have more than that. When I worked at McKinsey, I was told that the audience find it challenging to digest a lot of analysis, more than 5. And if you want to communicate clearly, try to synthesize into higher level groups. Don't have one analysis like this. It might be perceived as if you don't know what to analyze there. It's a little bit superficial, and your analyst would be underutilized. So make sure you have at least 2 analyses. All right. I think I covered most of the areas. Before we do a quiz, I would like to present the structure to demonstrate some storytelling, and that will help develop a reference point as well, so that you know what to look out for. So let's imagine the candidate took a couple of minutes, prepared their framework, and now it's time to present. No, terrific. Thank you so much for giving me a moment to lay out my plan of attack here. So I would like to explore 4 areas. First, revenue. Secondly, costs. Thirdly, our client Scottis. And finally, fast food market in the South. Now, in terms of the revenue, I'm thinking about current revenue and trends, breakdown by region, and pricing strategy. I'm not that familiar with this space, but I would imagine it's fairly commoditized. We have a lot of very similar fast food chains, and our customers have a lot of options they can go to. So they would choose the cheapest one. Given this high price pressure, I don't think we enjoy a lot of pricing power in this case. And if we need to increase our revenue, we should focus on volume. This is just my initial understanding, and I would like to get some hard data to validate that with you later. Once I understood revenue, I would like to double click on costs and get a better sense of fixed and variable costs. I would imagine that this is a high variable cost business, as it is labor intensive and will likely spend a lot on raw materials. Given the high variable cost nature of it, I would think that in order to increase our profitability, we need to focus on operational excellence of our stores. But again, this is just my first reaction, and I would like to run it by you later. Once I educated myself on the financials, I would like to look into the Scottis and get a better understanding of their offerings, customer segments, marketing strategy, and distribution. Given the commoditized nature of this business, I would imagine that marketing is the key a sales driver. We need to have a really strong brand, and that would probably attract our customers and help us differentiate from other very similar fast food chains. And that's why I would like to get a better sense of our budgets, marketing messages, marketing channels, and some seasonal changes to our marketing approach. Finally, I would like to look into the fast food market and understand the growth rate, major players, and typical margins. I would imagine that the fast food industry is a mature market, as it has been around for decades, so I don't think it's growing too fast. We might see low single-digit numbers like 2-3%, and these flat market dynamics might not help us in the long term and might limit our long-term growth potential. In terms of typical margins, given the high price pressure in this space, I would imagine that the margins are slim, and that is alarming, as if our profitability is declining, very soon we might end up in the red zone, so we need to move really fast. If this approach sounds reasonable, I would like to start with the revenue. Do we have any pricing data? So it took me exactly 3 minutes. I presented my framework, and in addition to that, I tried to contextualize different elements. I talked about the pricing strategy and how we probably can't move prices too much. We are a price taker, given that this is a commoditized industry. I hypothesized that this is a high variable cost business, which means that we need to ensure healthy unit economics, as increase in volume did not trigger economies of scale as much as it would have if we were in a high fixed cost business. I hypothesize that marketing is the key success factor, given that offerings are commoditized. It's very challenging to stand out if you have burgers or fried chicken or some similar product items, as fast food is very, very similar these days. And finally, I talked about the growth rate and typical margins. Now, a couple of comments around these stories, a couple of important ones. Number one, and that's the motto of consulting. You don't need to be right. You need to make sense. You don't need to be right. You need to make sense. Consulting is a hypothesis-driven business. You will never have all the information you need, but you still need to connect the dots and hypothesize. And for candidates who come from PhD background, science, or audit, it's quite challenging because they are used to being like 99% accurate in their conclusions. For consulting, you don't need that level of accuracy. You just need to make sense. And which means that you're going to be wrong. And you're going to be wrong a lot, maybe 70% of times. And that's totally okay. On the real project, on day one, you will have your day one hypothesis. And tomorrow it will be proven wrong because you will educate yourself on the problem and you will have a new one. And you will start pivoting and adjusting it. And by the end of the second week, you're going to have really strong hypothesis that you can substantiate with strong evidence and you can speak to with a really high level of confidence. Let's imagine I said that, all right, the market is flat. That was my initial hypothesis, given that this is a mature space. Usually mature markets, they already saturated, they flatten out, and that means that they don't grow, they don't create favorable conditions for players to grow. They might be a strong headwind, so that's potential problem. And then later in the case, the interviewer gives me the chart that suggests that the market is actually rapidly expanding, maybe like, I don't know, 15%. So what I can say is, terrific. Thanks so much for sharing this piece of data, as it helps me to go back and revisit my initial understanding. And now it seems like we are actually in a fast-growing space that offers really favorable market conditions to grow, but it also attracts potentially newcomers. So the competitive landscape might be changing, the pressure might be increasing very soon, so we need to move fast. So I did not apologize. I did not bring any negative energy. I stayed confident, and I took the new piece of data and I tried to build on top of that, synthesizing and providing new hypothesis. So you don't need to be right, you need to make sense. The second thing to highlight here, and we'll talk about storytelling in more detail next Wednesday. It's webinar number 4. That the second thing here is that you need to make sure you have so what. Candidates quite often confuse storytelling with other things. For example, they start doing brainstorming in the cost structure, thinking that's a storytelling. They will say, and in my second bucket, I would like to double click on costs and understand fixed and variable. I would imagine on the fixed side, it's rent, maintenance, marketing, and on the variable cost side, I would see labor, raw materials, credit card commissions, maybe distribution commissions to DoorDash if we use any food delivery companies. Great skill, but you will use it later when you have a brainstorming question. You need to make sure you have so what, or in other words, is it exciting or alarming for us for solving this case for increasing profitability? So instead of suggesting this list of costs, you can hypothesize whether it's high fixed cost business or high variable cost business and see what implications it might have to our strategy. Another thing that people sometimes confuse is suggesting a lot of questions. They will say, and I would like to understand the pricing strategy. Are we aligned with the industry benchmarks? Do we have any pricing tiers? Do we have any changes of pricing in the past? Do we provide any bundles? Great list of questions, but you do not have so what. So if you don't have so what, that's not an insight, that's not a story. All right, I hope this makes sense and hopefully it doesn't feel overwhelming. If it does, please ask questions. Again, this webinar is for you. So let's make sure we maximize your learning outcomes today. In order to for us to move forward, please click the link in the chat. Let's do a very short quiz. Let's give it a minute and a half, and then we will look into it and debrief. Let's give it 10 more seconds. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your responses. So let's look into that. Which of these analyses are must-haves? So definitely number 1, revenue, number 8, costs. So those two are major drivers for profitability. Then don't forget about the external factors. There are 3 of them. Competitive landscape, growth rate of the market, number 9, and typical margins. They're not on the list, but they're also important. As well as a business model or internal factors like target customer groups. Each customer group, like families, students, corporate clients, low-end, high-end, mass market, each customer group has their own profitability profile. They have their own willingness to pay, price sensitivity, preferences, and they would depending on which group you're focused on, your profitability profile will differ. And your market will be different, your competition might be different. So it's important to understand where you play and where you don't. Market economic situation, it's a little bit too high level, it's a little bit too generic. Usually you are expected to be focused on the case and the market you are currently in. You can explore the growth rate of the market, and if the market is shrinking, then one of the drivers might be macroeconomic situation that you can explore later. But that's not the first priority area to look into. Another way to think about that is if you think about a consulting project like McKinsey, it's $1 million per month, right, for a team of EM plus 2. And the client would not pay that much so that you tell them inflation rate or unemployment rate or interest rates. They can Google it. So macroeconomic situation are not that important for the client. Operational capabilities, they don't hurt to know. Feel free to look into them. They are relevant for cost optimization, but if you leave them out, it would not hurt. Same with marketing strategies, definitely makes sense, but if you don't feel them and leave them out, it would not be a big deal. All right, so this, okay, let's see. What expected timing? 2 minutes to build and 3 minutes to present. All right, let's explore this one. What is the key success factor in the framework part? Depends on the stage of your preparation, but if we talk about the interview stage, 80% of candidates will be able to structure a case. And you saw it yourself, profitability is not that challenging. You already know how to attack it, what analysis you should incorporate. So you will be able to cover all of that, and you will be able to stay MISI, which stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. That's important, but that's the baseline. Pretty much everybody will be able to do that. Now, how do you differentiate? What becomes the most important in your presentation? It's your business acumen. How much stories you can incorporate, how much different you can sound from others. And I try to demonstrate that in my presentation when I contextualize different parts of the framework to show that I already thought it through. I have an interesting hypothesis here and there. Some time ago, I asked a McKinsey partner, like, hey, who is the best candidate that you interviewed? And the answer was the one that made me want to jump on the table, because I was so excited to hear insight that even I haven't thought about. So that's the energy or the perception you would like to reach. One of the biggest misconceptions of case interviews is that I need to solve the case and that will give me an offer. Well, solving the case is a baseline. It's something that a lot of candidates can do. What you need to do, the second goal for you should be, I need to sell myself. I need to make the interviewer want me on their team. And how can you do that? If you demonstrate your client ready, if you project good energy, and if you can demonstrate you can bring a lot of value to the table. You have so many insights throughout the entire case, and some insights are so deep that even the interviewer hasn't thought about that. So that's why I would encourage you to practice that storytelling aspect. All right. So the candidate presented their framework, and then the interviewer reacts. Peter, thanks so much for sharing your approach here. Makes perfect sense. Our team has started working on it already. Now, the manager has just walked in, and they would like us to think about revenue, specifically revenue growth ideas. So how can we increase revenue for our client? What would be your suggestions? No, absolutely. I'm thinking about increasing our prices. Maybe we can introduce a sit-down areas. Maybe we can launch a loyalty program. And maybe we can partner with food delivery companies like Uber Eats. Happy to continue suggesting more ideas, or if this makes sense, I would like to start by exploring a loyalty program. Do we have any insight into that? All right, so I suggested 4 ideas, and that's totally all right. That's average. But if you want to stand out, 7 ideas will put you in top 5%. I suggested a list of ideas, which is okay, but structure will give you additional points. Typically, interviewers prefer seeing candidates who can think top down. So structure pretty much everywhere for your framework, for your brainstorming, for your math, will give you additional points. Generic ideas are okay, but if you can provide case-specific ideas, like increase prices is generic, but introduce it down areas or partner with food delivery companies are very case specific. So those will be more valuable. And finally, it's great it's okay if you take 30, 40 seconds, and most candidates do, but if you need a moment, sorry, if you can do that on the fly, that will give you additional points. So revenue growth ideas is a very popular question. You will have it in around 20% of cases, and it's a good idea to know how to attack it. One of the ways to think about it is 4 Ps. If you're not familiar with 4 Ps, it stands for pricing, product, place, and promotion. This framework was designed half a century ago, so some interviewers might perceive that as outdated, but they still use it themselves. So maybe do not mention 4 Ps when you present your approach. Don't say, I would like to use 4 Ps here, but instead suggest, I would like to break it down into pricing, value proposition, distribution channels, and marketing. So now we have 4 dimensions that we can explore each of them and suggest some ideas. So in terms of pricing, you can, let's put together a cheat sheet of ideas that you can leverage in other cases as well. So in terms of pricing, you can definitely decrease prices, but you can also introduce combos and bundles. You can do pricing tiers. For example, you can offer organic food at a higher price. You can do price discrimination. For example, student discounts. You can do sizing, charging different prices for different amounts. For example, small cappuccino versus large cappuccino. Subscriptions sometimes might make sense if you have a lot of regular visitors, like subscription for lunches. And you might also have, yeah, I think those are, that's a good list. So the next one is a value proposition. And here we can talk about 2 dimensions. First, new offerings. We can suggest corporate catering services, new desserts, plant-based burger, etc. We can also improve customer experience by offering sit-down areas, expanding working hours, training your employees to be friendly, and similar. Distribution channels. The most obvious one is open more stores. But you can also partner with food delivery companies. You can launch an app for pre-orders. You can partner with retailers to sell prepackaged food and beverage, something that Panera and Starbucks do. In terms of marketing, you can do 3 things. You can do more advertisement, promotions, and a loyalty program. Now you can double down on that and suggest we need to do digital marketing, billboards, TV, print, partner with celebrities. That all counts. You can keep that under the kind of umbrella of advertisement. All right, as you can see, there is a lot going on. There are a lot of ideas. You don't need that many. 4 ideas will be an average answer. 7 ideas will put you in top 5%. So this is one of the ways you can answer this question. It's a very comprehensive answer. Feel free to take a screenshot to use that as a flashcard. In general, I would encourage you to develop flashcards for common brainstorming questions There are 5 of them: revenue growth ideas, key cost items, risks, synergies, and comparison. We're going to explore them next Monday during our 3rd webinar, brainstorming. And if you have those flashcards and revisit them on a regular basis, you will be able to internalize these ideas and be able to do these brainstormings on the fly. Saying that, you won't be able to lay it out and write it out the way you can see on the screen, because you would only have 30-40 seconds. So you will be able only to quickly structure it and maybe suggest one or two ideas on the paper, and then you will need to start talking. And that's why it's another reason why it's good to practice and have these flashcards. All right, I hope this makes sense. Let's do a quick exercise. Please click the link in the chat. It will take you to the quiz, and then we will check out your answers in a minute and a half. And it's taking a little bit longer than usual. Let's give it 30 more seconds. All right. It seems like people are finishing things up. Let's start going through this. Major areas: pricing and distribution. Perfect. Yeah, all great. How many ideas should you generate? 4 ideas is average, and 7 ideas will put you into 5%. How to impress the interior? Pretty much all of them. Structuring will be fantastic. If you do that on the fly, that's usually appreciated. If you provide case-specific ideas versus generic ideas, that will be great. And add flavors, stories. Yeah, it's a good idea to contextualize some of your ideas. I would not do all of them. It might take a little bit too long, but if you contextualize one idea with an interesting story or insight, that will be great. Suggest 3 ideas on how to increase revenue. Combo bundle: partner with retailers, focus on customer experience, decrease price, launching new products, giving student discounts, launching app. Terrific. When you suggest launching a new product, try to be a little bit more specific. What do you mean? Like new desserts, plant-based burgers, or chocolate Dubai, or something else. Accessibility, affordability, and awareness. Drive volume through appropriate pricing. Okay. For time stopping now. Okay, so yeah, pricing is a great idea. Menu innovation, upselling. Again, a little bit more specific will be great. Upselling makes sense. I would just try to convert it into more actionable, like train your personnel to be to upsell and offer larger portions, for example. Digital and delivery expansion. All right. Discounts after X time. Okay, perfect. Drink or cheap. Okay. with purchase. Perfect. Reduce cost of goods. So cost reduction would not help you increase revenue. It will help you improve profits. So sometimes candidates confuse revenue with profits, and those are very basic business terms. So you want to make sure that you're very clear. So cost reduction would not help you with revenue. Increase number of products and more stores. Increase number of products, again, a little bit too generic. You should be a little bit more actionable, and more stores makes perfect sense. Yeah, increase number of stores, great. Increase sales prices, perfect. Increase number of product types, the same, a little bit too generic. If you can suggest specific product items like launch corporate catering services, that will be more case specific. Partnership with food delivery partners, awesome. Promotion and good marketing campaign, give offers to newly joining customers. Okay, although I'm not sure how you're gonna track this, like operationally, is it feasible, as you might not have, like if it's digital, then you will be able to, but it's offline stores. I'm not sure you will be able to track it. Combination bundle, okay, given, so it's not perfect. Partner with food delivery, fantastic. All right, so great ideas. Thanks so much for sharing. So we are at the top of the hour. Let's take 3-minute break. Feel free to use restroom, stretch, replenish your favorite beverage, and we will be back in 3 minutes. Welcome back, and we are moving to the next question. The interviewer heard the answer, and now, Peter, thanks so much for sharing your very aggressive revenue growth plan. It sounds terrific. Now, let's shift the gears and talk about the other part of the equation, costs. What are the major expenses in this business? No, absolutely. The way I'm thinking about it is fixed costs and variable costs. On the fixed side, I'm thinking about this, and that. So let me put together a cheat sheet of the costs that you usually would see in different cases. Uh, Fixed costs are rent, maintenance, marketing, overhead, transportation, logistics, and research and development. So rent, we have a lot of restaurants with likely rent that we need to pay it. Maintenance, we have a lot of equipment, fridges, they break down sometimes. We need to check on them, and for that we need to have maintenance team. We need to pay for spare parts, and that will be maintenance expenses. Marketing will be huge. It's a commoditized industry, and we need to establish strong brand and maintain the brand awareness, so we will have large marketing budgets. Overhead, we need to pay our management team, we need to pay IT, our HR, and other central services. Transportation, we will need to deliver ingredients from our warehouses to our stores, and that will be transportation costs. We might develop new product items, and for that we need to run some experimentation for different food item design, and that will require some budget or research and development. In terms of variable costs, we might talk about raw materials, which are packaging, ingredients, labor, distribution commissions. For example, Uber Eats, we will need to pay them 10 to 15% commission. Credit card transaction fees. Usually it's 2-3% to Visa and MasterCard, as well as banks. Discounts sometimes will be perceived as costs, and they're not costs per se, but they behave like costs. And sometimes in the P&L statements, you will see gross sales, discounts, and net sales. So by changing your discount policy, you can improve your profitability. And import-export duties. In this case, they would not be applicable. That's why I put a question mark, but they would likely be applicable in other cases. So this is a nice flashcard, so feel free to leverage it. And a couple of quick comments here. Some questions I receive a lot. Question number one, what about land, equipment, stores? Great question. Those are not costs, though. Those are CapEx, those are assets, those are investments. You'll find them on the balance sheet, but not in the income statement. So if you want to talk about costs associated with this, you can talk about maintenance, insurance, utilities, rent, but a one-time cash outflow is not a cost, it's capital expenditure. Secondly, sometimes I would be asked, hey, wait a second, marketing changes all the time. Why isn't it variable? Because the fixed and variable costs, they are not called like that, depending on the fact whether they vary or not. It's just unfortunate naming that is confusing. Fixed costs are not dependent on the volume sold. So the volume can go up, can go down, but it would not affect fixed costs. And the fixed costs, they can change a lot. If you are in the season, marketing will be high. If it's the dead season, marketing will be low. But it doesn't mean that marketing is variable. And finally, the last question, why is not transportation variable cost as it increases with the business growth? Well, it's a great question. It's because transportation is a so-called step function. Here's step function. You need one truck, your business grows, then you need another one, then the third one, and you have this step function. And if you believe that the steps are very short, then you can allocate your transportation cost to variable, because they will behave almost like variable costs. Same with labor. If you believe that you pay maybe not hourly wages, but maybe monthly wages. So it's a step function. And if steps are very large, you can allocate labor to fixed costs. It works both ways as long as you can explain it. Fun fact: one of the cases I worked on for my first book, like 4 or 5 years ago, was about airlines, and I thought that airlines are high fixed cost business, and fuel, maintenance, crew expenses would not be changing with number of passengers, tickets sold, and but it's surprising that in the financial statements, the airlines will explicitly call those variable costs. So I got curious. I talked to people from strategic functions of airlines, and they explained that that's because they think about their businesses not through the lens of passenger tickets sold, but through the lens of flights. So they consider that step larger than one ticket sold. And if you think about that through the lens of flights, then it makes sense. If you have one additional flight, you will have more fuel, more maintenance, more crews, and those costs become variable. So as you can see, it's like these fixed and variable costs are not set in stone. There's a little bit of flexibility there. As long as you understand it, as long as you can explain it, you should be good. So this is how you can answer this. Again, this is another flashcard for this type of question, and this is a popular question. You will have it in around 15% of your cases. So make sure that you know how to answer it. All right. I hope it resonates. Let's double check that. Please click the link in the chat. You will see a very short survey, and let's give it a minute and a half and then debrief. Great, thanks so much for your answers. Let's dive into them. Fixed and variable, perfect. So sometimes some candidates would start a little bit improvising and overthinking, and they start talking about different ways to break down costs, hoping that that will help them differentiate, and they will do value chain based, which is supply, production, distribution, or direct and indirect costs. But those are legitimate ways to structure, but it does not necessarily give you extra points, as pretty much everybody nowadays uses fixed and variable costs. Interviewers would expect it from you. So I would just do classic way without overthinking it. The fixed costs, garage costs. All right. Typical fixed costs. Yeah, let's talk about a couple of things here. So factory is not a cost. It is an asset. You will find it in your balance sheet, not in your income statement. It's an investment. So it would not change your profits. Rent of factory will, insurance for factory will, utilities will, but factory itself will not. Same with equipment, number 10. Equipment is a capital expenditure. It is not a cost. Yeah, I think everything else makes sense. Don't forget about overhead. Overhead is fixed, it's headquarters, central services, and they usually don't change with growing volume. All right, Peter, thank you so much for providing your breakdown of costs. It resonates a lot, and our analysts started building a financial model based on that. So good news, we talked to the client and they got really excited about the idea to introduce sit-down areas. So they launched a pilot. And as you remember, standard restaurants did not have any sit-down areas. They only had drive-ins. And pilot restaurants, they had sit-down areas. So what does this chart tell you? No, totally. It's great to hear that our client got excited about this idea. And it seems like we already implemented that and have some preliminary financial data. There is a lot going on here. So let me take a moment to process it. So you can use this phrase to win a little bit of time, and then you can continue. It seems like the pilot restaurants were a success as we increased our quantity dramatically, which make me believe we should adopt this business model across the entire chain. I also noticed that we increased prices for milkshakes, and despite that price increase, our volume did not decline, which is exciting. It seems like our clients are not that price sensitive. They might enjoy this new experience of sit-down areas. Maybe they hang out with their friends and family, can order more, and that suggests that we might want to capitalize on this and increase our prices, and not just for milkshakes, but also for burgers and sodas. Finally, it's interesting that our profit margins did not increase for burgers and sodas despite dramatically improved volume. I would expect to see economies of scale at play here, as with higher volume, we should have gotten volume discounts, but it's not happening. So it seems like we haven't explored this yet, and this might be another lever to pull to improve our profitability. Now, does this understanding make sense to you? All right. So chart reading is the most challenging part of the case. And it's really hard to practice because there are hundreds of different types of charts with really like hundreds and thousands of different patterns. But what's valuable is those insights with so what. What is not valuable is when candidates start restating the numbers from the chart or start crunching numbers. Like sometimes candidates will go, interesting. Okay, so burgers, it seems like they were 15, now they're 25, so it's around 66% growth. And sodas increased by 50%, which is great as well. And milkshakes doubled, which is fantastic. So I did a lot of math, like a lot of calculations, but I did not synthesize. I did not provide any so what. The so what here is that the pilot restaurants are a success, and we should expand this business model to the entire chain of 2,000 restaurants, or maybe not the entire chain, but for other restaurants. But that will be the recommendation. So unless you do that recommendation, unless you synthesize, that would not give you more points. Sometimes candidates will say, all right, so we increased $4.5 from milkshakes, which is great. And that's probably why our profit margins went up. Again, this is math. Try not to do math, try to do business. Try to demonstrate what business insights you can generate. And the insight here is that our clients, our customers, they enjoy high willingness to pay, and we can charge them more given that the demand went up dramatically and the price sensitivity seems like to be low, and we can capitalize on that. All right, Peter, thanks so much for sharing your insights for this chart. That's great. Now, let's quantify the success of pilot restaurants. Can you please run the numbers to understand the total revenue and total profits of the pilot restaurants and of the standard restaurants? No, absolutely. Let me start with the standard restaurants. I'm thinking about the following approach: price multiplied by quantity for revenue, and then multiply by profit margins for profits, and then I will sum it up. So in terms of revenue, we're talking about 2 multiplied by 15,000 plus for sodas, it's $2 multiplied by 10,000 plus $4 multiplied by 5,000. So altogether, we're talking about 30,000, 20, so it's $70,000. Now, in terms of the profits, it's $2 multiplied by 15,000 multiplied by 15% plus $2 multiplied by 10,000 multiplied by 10% plus $4 multiplied by 5,000 multiplied by 20%. So it's 30 so it's 4.5 thousand plus 20 by 2,000 plus 40 plus it's 4,000. So altogether it's 10.5 thousand in profits. Now continue with pilot restaurants. I will use the same approach. And we want to have 2 multiplied by 25,000 plus 2 multiplied by 15,000 plus $4.50 multiplied by 10,000. So altogether it will give us 50, 30, 125,000. And finally, in terms of the profit margins, it's $2,000 multiplied by $2 multiplied by 25,000 multiplied by 15% plus $2 multiplied by 15,000 multiplied by 10% plus $4.50 multiplied by 10,000 multiplied by 25%. So it's 50,000, 7.5 thousand plus 30,000 and 10% of that 3,000 plus 45 and 1/4 of that 11.25 thousand. So altogether it's 10.5. It's going to be 21.75. Is it all right if I round it to 22? Sure, absolutely. Terrific. $22,000. All right, so it seems like as expected, our revenue dramatically improved and our profits are more than doubled, which confirms that this is a successful business model. However, it's a little bit surprising given that we did not do anything innovative. We adopted a business model that is widely used by dozens of other fast food chains for decades, and all of a sudden our numbers went through the roof. So I'll be curious to see if pilot restaurants are representable, or they might be located in high foot traffic areas like downtowns, or there might have been some marketing campaign to support this new business model, and those lurking factors might affect our results, and thus we might not be able to scale it to the entire chain. Do we have any information about that? All right, so a couple of rules about the math. Number one, write down the question. It's a mystery, but in almost like half of cases, candidates forget what they are calculating. They get so overexcited, they start crunching numbers, and then in the middle of their calculations, they just realize, oh my gosh, can you repeat the question, please? And that immediately takes away from your credibility. So the first thing in the math, take a new page and write down the question at the top so that you anchor yourself. Then do verbal math. You are expected to walk the interviewer through your thought process. If you just provide the answer, that would not be enough. Structure math. It's not always possible, but if you can, it will be great if you start your calculation with your approach, with how you're going to run the numbers. It's okay to round it as long as it is plus minus 5%. And it's a good idea to double check with the interviewer. When I was running the last calculation, I clarified, is it okay if I round it to 22,000? Sometimes they might say no, because down the line you will need this number to be accurate. As for missing data points, not for this case, but for other cases, it's sometimes they keep some numbers close to their chest, and you will need to identify the missing pieces and proactively ask them. And finally, you need to pass test, so what? you are running the numbers not for the sake of running the numbers, but in order to synthesize and bring it back to the problem, to profitability. How does this help us to improve profitability? You can have two stories here. First, the straightforward one, it's a success, we need to scale it up. And second one, a little bit cautious one, hey, wait a second, it seems suspicious for this and that reason. Let's make sure that this sample is statistically significant. It doesn't matter which one you would choose as long as you make sense. As I stated earlier, you don't need to be right, you need to make sense. All right, I hope this makes sense. Please let me know if you have any questions. And for the sake of time, we'll continue to wrap things up. A recommendation at the end of the case, you would be usually asked to provide your recommendations, or you will be told that, hey, you are in the elevator and you bumped into the CEO, and CEO would like to know what's going on the project. So can you summarize? Regardless, you will need to provide recommendation in some form or shape, and I would recommend to use the approach RRRN. It stands for recommendation, reasons, risks, and next steps. And usually you will have one recommendation, 2, 3 reasons, 2, 3 risks, and 2, 3 next steps. And you will be given around 1 minute 30 seconds to deliver it. For example, it can sound like this. Thanks so much for having me. Based on my initial assessment, I would recommend to introduce sit-down areas for 2 major reasons. First, it will dramatically improve your economics in terms of revenue and in terms of profits. And secondly, we will get access to new customer groups who prefer sit-down areas, which will help us expand sizable addressable market. There are some risks, however. We should expect competitive response, and we might not have enough funding to execute such a large-scale transformation. As for the next steps, I would like to design an operational model and a marketing strategy. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So try to make it clean, on the point. Sometimes candidates, they start with a little bit of overview, or we did revenue growth brainstorming, then cost reduction, then we ran some numbers. That's a little bit bottom up, and you need to be top down. So start immediately with recommendation, and then add all of these additional layers. So this is how it can look like. And yeah, pretty much how we presented it. So that's the flow of the case. Let's go through this one more time. We started with the business problem, and you restated it and asked 2, 3 questions, then asked for a moment, and the key success factor, or the way you can differentiate if you can start adding those insights right from the beginning. Then you structured your approach. You can choose 3-bucket or 4-bucket structure. It doesn't matter. It's up to you, whatever works for you the best, but make sure that you incorporate important pivotal analysis in your structure. Once you're done with the structure preparation, you need to present it and try to beef it up with business acumen. Try to suggest interesting second layer insights. You don't need too many. 1 or 2 will be fantastic. Usually candidates do not do any. And they sound quite robotic. They come across as cookie cutter approach. So try not to sound mechanical. Try to make it case specific and incorporate some insights. Then we had a brainstorming question. The ideal brainstorming is structured with 7 ideas, case specific ideas, and on the fly. And I would encourage you to develop flashcards for each of 5 most common brainstorming types. Revenue is one of them, and you can see one of the approaches on the screen. Key cost items is the other one, and another flashcard is right in front of you. Then we had a chart, the most challenging part. You need to provide insights, not math. Math happens later. Then we ran numbers and make sure that at the end of the math, you pass the test. So what? Again, those storytelling, those insights. And at the end, you need to provide your recommendation, top down, starting with what to do right away. I hope this makes sense. I hope this webinar was helpful. Before you go, please click the link in the chat to share your feedback on what worked for you today, what you learned, and what you're still confused about. I would highly appreciate your input, as it helps me improve this experience for future generations. I'm going to stick around in case you have any questions about today's webinar, cases in general, resume, networking, consulting as a career. We'll be more than happy to address those. And thank you so much. It was my pleasure working with you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, everybody, we will see you on Wednesday at 3 o'clock Central Time for part 2. Thanks, Peter. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right away. It will be my pleasure to address them.